All right, how's everybody doing today? Packed house. I'd be lying if I said this is the biggest crowd I've ever spoke to in my entire life, but I'm glad you all made it. Thanks for spending some time with me today. I'm going to talk about a couple things. Who here likes happy hour? Raise your hand if you like happy hour. I like a good happy hour. There's a lot that happens at a happy hour. People tend to loosen up, get relaxed. I got to tell you about this one time I was at a happy hour, and we're all hanging out. And I remember there was an engineering leader, really, really respected engineering leader. And he got, had a couple drinks, started getting a little loose-lipped, and he started to really tell everybody how he felt about security. And I'm just sitting here, I'm listening, I'm like, wow, this is really interesting, really enlightening. I'm glad I made it to this happy hour. And I asked him, I said, what is cybersecurity to you? And he goes, you guys just tell me what I can't do. Who here has heard of like cybersecurity being like the Department of No? Have you heard of that? Anybody? You can't do this, you can't download that, right? That has to change because that's not doing anyone any favors. So we're going to be talking a little bit today about how do we empower the business with cybersecurity, and I'm going to give you a couple frameworks that I came up with for not only how do you make an impact with cybersecurity, but also how do you go deep on the different topics, digital transformation, zero trust, asset management, and the like. So let's talk about empower a little bit. So what does it mean to empower? We get this idea, this Department of No, but what is the opposite of Department of No? Well, really, I like to make a comparison to Formula One. Who's familiar with Formula One? Formula One is the racing cars that are really low to the ground. They look kind of funny. And I had never been into Formula One or anything. I spent some time working at Netflix, and they had a show called Drive to Survive. They have a few seasons out now, and it was really, really exciting because it was all about the engineering of the vehicle and the drama between the two teams and even some of the drivers. But one thing that I found that was really interesting when you look at the relationship with the driver and the rest of the team is this concept of a pit crew. And what the pit crew does is they sit and they watch all these diagrams and watch dashboards, and they make sure that the health of the vehicle is what it needs to be to push forward. So let's say you're in second place as a vehicle. You could push that engine harder and go into first if you want, but you might be taking unnecessary risk, right? You might need to take a pit stop. But that's what we do in cybersecurity. What we really do is we enable the business to move as fast and innovatively as possible. Because if you look at cybersecurity from this Department of No, they just tell me what I can't do, they just kind of suck the fun out of everything, then that's not the best way to really build that relationship. But if you say, I'm going to enable you to go as fast as possible, as creatively as possible, then that's a very, very different mindset than the Department of No. All right, so we're going to talk about two frameworks here today. The first framework was originally intended for threat intelligence. I spent pretty much my entire career in threat intelligence, and this was a framework that I developed for all of my other threat intel leaders in the industry. And what it does is how you enable that particular program to make an impact. And time over time, it started to develop and change, and so then I created the easy framework for all of cybersecurity. Like, this is how you can make an impact through cybersecurity. And then we'll get to the second framework here in a second. EASY is an acronym. The E stands for elicit requirements. So, since this is a much more intimate group, we can probably make this a little interactive. When I say elicit requirements for cybersecurity, what does that mean to anybody? Gather data? What kind of data? Yeah, maybe what controls are already in place. Anything else? So here's the secret. Cybersecurity, believe it or not, is a service-centric function. When you're integrated within the business, all those business units, you look at finance, you look at engineering, you look at HR, all of these different components within the business are supported by cybersecurity. So when you elicit requirements from the stakeholders within a business, you're talking to these stakeholders like, oh, what is it that you need to do? Oh, I need this data to go from point A to point B. So then cybersecurity says, oh, this is how you can do it safely, or this is what might happen if you take this particular risk. So eliciting requirements, talking to all the stakeholders that are in a company is super, super important. Because a lot of times what we do is we say, all right, this is what happened, this is what worked at my last company, so why don't I just do it here? But that you might miss the mark. But if you come in and you get the context from everybody else and what they do, then you'll have a much better picture as to what they need to get done and then how you can use technology and cybersecurity to enable that mission. So once you understand that you have to have these conversations with your stakeholders, then you know, like, okay, this is where I'm going to build my program from the requirements, from understanding what everyone else needs to do to execute their mission. Once you understand what everyone needs, and you're like, okay, we need to have availability up on this website, it needs to be secure, maybe we need to look at something like a DDoS protection, oh, we have no asset management, we really need to understand what's going on in our internals. You have all these requirements, but now you need to assess your resources. So resources could be technology, it could be processes, like actually writing out the processes, this is how one thing flows to another, or even these are the people we need to hire. These are the skill sets we have. If you were largely on-prem and then all of a sudden you're moving to the cloud, you might need some additional skills from cloud engineers or cloud architects to come help support whatever it is that you're doing for your mission. All the things that you need to basically support the requirements that the other people have. Strive for impact. This is super important. And it's important because how many times have you seen anything that seems to be operating well because you see things moving, but it might not be actually changing anything? We saw this a lot in threat intelligence, and we definitely see this a lot in cybersecurity because we're doing things, we're doing stuff, we're very busy, but that doesn't necessarily mean we're moving the needle for security. Have you heard of alert fatigue, right? Raise your hand if you've heard of alert fatigue. Doing all that, being busy, doesn't necessarily mean you're making the organization better. So how do we strive for impact? You strive for impact by prioritizing what it is that's important to the business, whether you're focused on, maybe you have critical data that needs to be controlled. Maybe you're in healthcare or maybe you're in finance of some sort. You need to have a good handle on what controls you need for the data. Maybe you need availability, like we were saying earlier. What are the things that we need to do from a cybersecurity perspective to make sure that everyone can operate and we can improve, constantly improve? We're going to talk about another framework here in a second. But when you strive for impact, it's constantly moving that needle forward. When you think of champions, like you think of champions like Michael Jordan, you think of Muhammad Ali, what, in your perspective, what makes a champion? Name out a couple things, no wrong answers. Winning. Winning makes a champion, right? What else? Leadership. Explain.
Well, you've got to get people around you to support you. Even if you're talking about a one-person sport like tennis, you've got a support cast around you that has to help make you better.
Yep. You have to have folks around you to make you better. So what that cast of people that are surrounding you, making you better, what does that enable you to do every single day? Right.
He didn't have to worry about rebounds as much when he had Robin, right?
Yeah.
So it lets each person play their role so that you can all work together.
Right. Everyone plays their role, and you incrementally get better every single day. A lot of folks talk about competition, and competition is great, but really the competition should be within yourself. It should be within the program. Think about it. If you took any program, I don't care what program you're thinking about, and you constantly improve it every single day, think about it after a year. Think about it after 2 years, 3 years. It's going to constantly improve. Champions, those people that we look up and are like, wow, how good are they? It didn't happen overnight. It was constant iterations over and over and over again, figuring out what works, what doesn't work, keeping everything that's important and tossing away the unessentials, right? That's kind of like Bruce Lee 101. But making sure that everything that you're doing is making an impact for the program. Because if you find yourself in this rat race of just staying busy, you're not making an improvement in your program. Feedback is a gift, and feedback is really tough, especially when egos are involved, when you're vulnerable, because if you make a painting and someone says, it could be better, right, it hurts. It's like, ooh, that sucks, right? You did your best. I thought it was a great painting. But if you take feedback and really use it to get better, right, we were talking about the iterative improvements over time, feedback is really another way, a mechanism in which you can do that. So when you're looking at something like a cybersecurity program, when you're working with all these stakeholders, maybe you're providing them metrics, maybe you're providing them a particular service, maybe you're giving them information. Whatever it is, it's something that can ultimately be improved over time. So if you're getting constant feedback from your stakeholders saying, hey, this was late, or hey, this wasn't enough information, not enough context, you're going to take that information and constantly improve that program across the board. You find folks, I mean, you've all seen it, I've seen it, you see people that really get wrapped around their self, their ego, and they tend not to take feedback very well. We've all seen it, like you've seen somebody who doesn't receive feedback really well. And that is a limiting mindset when it comes to individuals, and it's definitely a limiting mindset when it comes to programs. So being able to have a feedback mechanism from your stakeholders is super, super important. But it's not even only just being receptive to feedback, it's honestly giving a way for folks to give you feedback. Because if you don't make that space, it's going to be tough for people. A lot of folks don't feel comfortable giving feedback. If you say, oh, well, how was this? Oh, yeah, no, it was fine, it was great. They'll always say that. A lot of people tend to say, oh, yeah, it was fine, it was great. But what you want to grow, you don't want to, that makes me feel good. When you receive feedback, giving them an area to give that feedback is super important. So sometimes you have to meet folks where they are. Some folks operate in something like a chat, or some folks like email. Some people like in-person conversation and meetings and things like that. Meeting them where they are is a great way to get that feedback, because they might feel more comfortable sending you an email than talking to you in person. So just understanding that there are different ways to get this information, and it sounds like, oh man, you're asking cybersecurity to do a lot, and you're right, I am. I'm asking us to do a lot because remember, we're that service-centric function that's going to enable everybody else to do their work better. So sometimes we have to take that extra step. We have to walk that extra mile in order to meet them with some customer service. So we've talked a little bit about how do we go broad with the cybersecurity program, right? We're talking a little bit about relationships. We talked a little bit about process, right? We need to figure out what the requirements are, what is the stuff that we need to meet those requirements. But now we're going to go into something that I think a lot of us has dealt with over the past couple of years. Things like digital transformation, adoption of new technologies. Some folks have moved to the cloud. Who's done some cloud migration recently? Raise your hand. Or who's adopting a zero trust model, or trying to get a handle on their asset management, right? There's a lot of stuff that we're doing. So how do we do that in a way that makes sense? So I run a podcast. Actually, I run a media company called Hacker Valley Media. And our main show is Hacker Valley Studio. And what we do is we try to find all these great things about humanity that we can bring to cybersecurity and improve everyone. And one of the things that we do as a practice, me and my co-host Ron Eddings, is we do Think Weeks. Anyone heard of a Think Week? Anyone know what that is? What's a Think Week? Exactly, is what Bill Gates used to do. He would take time, go to a cabin, seclude himself, maybe he had some books, but he basically disconnected from everything. And this particular framework came from a particular Think Week. We were sitting around, and I was thinking, I was like, it seems like there's a recurring theme when someone wants to do anything great. And this can apply to sports, this can apply to hobbies, it can be work, it could be relationships, really anything. And I boiled it down to another pretty clean acronym, and it's called EXIST. So the first thing about EXIST is it actually came up because of the last 2 years that we've been in with the pandemic. There were a lot of people I was talking to, and they were saying, it's so hard to live out life because I'm stuck inside. And I can't do anything. There's nothing to do. I'm sick of watching Netflix. And it made me think, I was like, there's so much that someone could do inside a house. Like even if you were to put somebody in a room and give them paper or maybe give them books or whatever it is. There's so much that people can do that they just don't realize. You just almost have to give them permission to be creative and think outside the box. Like if you wanted to, I'm going to take up drawing, right? And I'm sure you all heard about people, picking up baking, right? That's another form of exist. So exist starts with exploration. Explore. What is there? What is out there? So if you think about it from a cybersecurity perspective, first you have to say, you know what? I don't know anything about zero trust, or I really don't have a handle on my asset management. So what are all the things that has to go into one of these topics? So if you think about it from a sports perspective, maybe you're a kid. You've been there, right? I've been there. When I start a sport, that's not for me. I do it for a couple weeks, and I'm like, I don't know about this one, right? And you try something else until you find that thing that kind of like hits you like a tuning fork. But some things are like a slow burn. It just develops with time and confidence. But exploration is all about understanding what is out there in the world. One of my best friends, he leads cybersecurity for the DVD portion of Netflix, and he would do a POC, a proof of concept or proof of value, every single week just to see what's out there, what technologies are coming up, what are the problems that they're trying to solve. He was constantly exploring and seeing what was out there. But it isn't just enough to really understand like what's out there. You have to go a little bit deeper. And there's two parts to this going deeper portion. The first part is immersion. What is probably the quickest way for you to learn a foreign language? Anyone? Being there. If I said, all right, you gotta learn Japanese, and I was like, you can either take all these books and all these videos and try to learn, or I can drop you into Japan and you have to survive for the next 3 months. What's gonna be the fastest way? Yeah, going to Japan, exactly. So whenever you're looking at these different concepts in technology and cybersecurity, let's say you really wanna go deep on something like incident response. Like really immerse yourself with the ideology, the imagery, the sounds, the terminology, all of the things that are in that world, because believe it or not, we learn a lot through osmosis. It isn't always the act of studying, which I'll get to in a second, but sometimes it's just being around these things. One of my favorite books in the world is called Art of the Impossible by Stephen Cutler. And he's the foremost expert in flow state. You ever have that feeling where you're locked into doing something and it's just like time is just like whizzing by, like, wow, I didn't realize I was doing this for 3 hours, because your ability matched up with the challenge. And so he constantly is doing research on this. And so he devises ways of people to get locked into flow states more readily. One of the concepts that he came up with, he calls it the 5 books of stupid. I think it's a terrible name, because I think it's actually a pretty brilliant concept. But what you do is you take 5 books on a subject maybe you're interested in and have no clue about. That first book is going to be about the best book that you can find on that topic. It could be fiction, nonfiction, it doesn't matter. But what it's about is about having fun and just enjoying whatever that topic is. I'm not sure how many zero trust fiction books are out there, but I don't think there are many. But find whatever book that is out there that's really interesting, and what you write down isn't necessarily like terminology or facts or figures or anything like that. It's not like taking an exam. What you write down is the things that actually pique your interest. Like, oh, wow, I didn't know APIs could do that. Or, oh, wow, this is interesting. Oh, I didn't know this particular factoid. And you write that stuff down. Then you go the next book deeper. This book is also all about fun and enjoyment, but it might be a little bit more dense. It might have more terminologies, definitions, figures, things like that. But again, you're just going to write down things that are interesting to you. And then you continue down this line. Eventually you get to a book where they're focused on the challenges of today. What are the things that everyone's thinking about? Oh, from a zero trust perspective, they're thinking about migrations and they're having issues doing this, X, Y, and Z. This is some of the problems. Again, you're going to write down the same stuff. And then finally, that 5th book is going to be a book about the future. So these are the theorists, the folks that are thinking about, okay, what's going to be the next stage of this particular thing? If you're looking at things like Web3 or blockchain technology, like where is it going to go next? Where are people making predictions? Once you get through all 5 of those books, you'll have a really solid understanding of whatever that concept is. So now you've immersed yourself within this world. You have a decent understanding without even actively practicing whatever it is. And then that's when we get to where champions are made. which is studying. And this is not just like reading books and trying to memorize facts and figures, but this is actual practical hands-on application of whatever it is. Whether you have to stand up an environment at your house to see how things interconnect, or how do you add credentials to a particular piece of software or solution. This is where you practice, you have these conversations, you ask questions, it's back and forth. You find the mentors, the people that can help you take that learning curve and shorten it just a little bit. Because we find that, mentors, they probably made a lot of the mistakes that you're going to make if you didn't talk to anybody. So these are that practical application. This is that iterative improvement again. I said it was going to be like a running theme, is constantly getting better. Like taking that craft and just making it a little bit better. So I would say when I started podcasting, I really didn't think it was going to go as big as it did. Really, it was all about those constant iterations, because even game time is practice. When you talk to any sports athlete, when they look at games, it's also a practice for them. It's also their ability to apply the things they've learned. Maybe they're working on particular movements, like they're performing, but they're also practicing when they're having their game. The main game is going to be when they make it to the championship and they become a champion, right? So thinking about it from that perspective, they did a study on either iteration or focus. And what they did was they had two groups. One group they were told, we want you to make an absolutely perfect sculpture. Take as much time as you need, you just get to make one. And then they had another group, and they said, we want you to make as many sculptures as possible. Like constantly improve, continue to make them, just make one, start over, make one, start over. They found that second group, that group B that had the iterations, made better sculptures than the group that was focused on making one perfect sculpture. So that tells you that practice is important. Now, all of this up until this point has been great from the perspective of the internal, because you're constantly making yourself better. But how do we make that reflect in our teams for cybersecurity? How do we make this reflect in our community? You go from the study to translate or transform. So what is that? Translation. Translation can be things like teaching. It could be things like stepping up on stage and having a conversation about things that you've experienced. It could be teaching kids. Maybe you're trying to get kids excited about cybersecurity. Maybe you're teaching the board about, hey, these are the risks that we're taking on because of X, Y, and Z adoption. Translating is telling other people, this is what I found through my experience, through my practice, through my trade craft. And then T is transform. Transform is pretty exciting because it's teaching in a way, but transforming is basically up-leveling whatever it is. So if you're doing something like threat hunting in your environment, and maybe you've learned a lot through all of this immersion and studying, but then you have an idea. You have a creative idea, and you're like, you know what, I'm going to try something different. You might have just created something that could be useful for everyone in the community. So then you've basically transformed that particular section of cybersecurity. So with all these things together, why is this important? Let's put it all together. So if we look at cybersecurity as not the Department of No, we look at it as something that's going to enable the business to go faster. I bet you if you go in tomorrow and you're talking to the C-suite or talking to the board and you're saying, you know what, I want to make the business faster. I want to make the business better. What C-suite member is going to say, you know, I don't want that. I just want you to continue to tell us what we can and can't do. No one's going to want that. So now that you have that context switch in your mind and also the mind of others, now you can have this collaborative back and forth with those stakeholders. And then we walk through easy, right? Elicit requirements. What do you need from cybersecurity? Like, what are the things that you need to do on a daily basis? Where are some of the gotcha areas? Where are some of the pain points? And then we start to build towards those requirements. Assess resources. I need to hire people. I might need some technology, some funding. Funding is a hard topic, but think about it this way. If you first went and got requirements from all over the company, and you said, okay, this is what I need to do, and then you made a list of the things that you needed to do it, if you said, I need this amount of money because I need to do X, Y, and Z, it's a much stronger argument than, oh, you know, give me between $5 and $10 million, and then I'll make a nice cybersecurity program for you. So assess your resources, then strive for impact, right? Constantly improving every single day, making an impact, making sure that the things that you're doing are high leverage from a technology perspective, process, making sure you're meeting the mark there. Yield to feedback. Talk to those stakeholders. Understand, hey, how is everything going? Check in with them. Have a cup of coffee. Take them to lunch. Understand how things are going, because that information is going to help you improve your program. Then we go into how do we go deep on something that's changing. Maybe we're going through a digital transformation. Maybe it's a completely new attack vector that we're having to deal with. So we need to learn as much as possible and get operational as fast as possible. So that you look at, explore what all is out there about that particular topic. Then you go a level deeper and you immerse yourself, right? You're learning Japanese, be in Japan, around the culture, the philosophies, the people. You're learning all these things all at the same time. Then you move into that study, which is more active. You're taking the classes, you're speaking to the mentors, you're doing the practice, the hands-on, and then ultimately you're getting to translate or transform. So how am I going to bring everyone else up? How am I going to make this community any better? These are the things that you can do, not only as an individual, but as a leader of security, IT, whatever it is, and you're gonna up-level that team pretty steadily. So yeah, I would love to leave it open for questions, anything that you wanna ask me about, whether it's about the frameworks, whether it's about Axonius, whatever it is you guys wanna talk about.
What was the name of your podcast again?
Hacker Valley Studio. Appreciate it.
Got one quick question.
Shoot.
Take a call. The first framework, the easy framework.
Mm-hmm.
I know you went through it sequentially, but is the goal to have it kind of overlap over time as you get better? Because when we started with illicit requirements,
Right.
we got to basically requesting feedback.
Yep.
I can see where those would become overlapping because you get those original requirements, and your next stage of the iterative process is to get that feedback, which is going to feed back into those requirements.
I'm glad you said that, because both frameworks are cyclical. You start at the beginning, you get your requirements, go all the way through to yield to feedback. Maybe the feedback is that my requirements are off. I need different requirements. So when your requirements change, what does that mean? You have to re-look at your resources. Like, oh, I need different resources. So that cycle starts all over. The same with the exist framework. So let's say you took it pretty broad-based, like I need to learn about cloud technology. And you're like, okay, so I'll go through the whole process, like, oh, but now I want to go a level deeper. Now I'm looking at cloud security or cloud monitoring. You can get as specific as you want to with the exist framework. And this the cyclone can go as deep as you really want it to. So you start back over. All right, we got to explore again. Okay, cool. Immerse myself. Study. Translator, transformer. Oh, something else. I got more questions. Do it again, over and over again. This is really how deep expertise is developed, because you constantly just go just a level deeper, and that context, that awareness, that practice, it doesn't just disappear when you start over. It sticks with you. What else? Is it? All right. Well, I appreciate the time. I hope this is useful for anybody. Feel free to use it. Also, I'm on LinkedIn, so definitely connect with me on there and let me know that this is where you saw me. But with that, thank you very much.